Everybody, my name is Paul. I'm the country realtor sitting at my little country kitchen table here, and I want to talk to you more about homesteading. It's my favorite subject as a realtor, and I'm a homesteader myself, and I meet a lot of people who are moving out of the city and out in the country, and so I provide a lot of information about buying and selling homes and property and land out in the rural area in Virginia. So I want to talk a little bit about some books here because I like to add some content here, and I'll run through them real quickly here, but things that you might encounter in a homestead, things you want to do out there to increase the value of your property and make use of its resources. So I'll go through these real quickly here. Book on dowsing. I've had this for a while. I haven't really gotten into it yet, but that's how they found water long ago. Even in the modern era, there's still well drillers today who will get a well and find water just by dowsing. So that's a cool book. How to buy foreclosures. I'm not an expert in that, but there is information out there. It's a bit of a process, and you got to deal with banks and a lot of paperwork and all kinds of stuff. But if you want to go through that, sometimes you can get some good deals on property. Home building process. I think I may have reviewed this book. If you want to ever build your home, even if you build a small home, you still want to know every home has a foundation, every home has a roof, and so on. So all the principles apply. And working with contractors, or some people who will do some of the work themselves, or maybe they have friends do some of the work, but then they'll hire a contractor for certain kinds of things like excavating and so on. So the home building process, understanding how it's done. Well-built house. Just start into this book here, but it's good to know. And there's many different kinds of constructions in the housing industry, and some of the houses are not really well built. But when you do look for your ideal dream home, if you find a place where it's attractive to you, you want to be able to know how the house is constructed, that particular style and methods and so on, and see if it's a really well-built house. Bit on farm forestry. Forest farming. There's a book I gave it away to somebody, but about farming the forest. That's how people did. We had chestnuts, fruit trees, all kinds of things. Medicines, herbs, buying and selling a home. Those are a real basic book. There's a lot of these out there, but you can get one like this. And one last one here, Secrets of the Soil. This is a complex book, and I have read only parts of it, but I've listened to the author's really interesting information about the soil, which from all the plants and all our food comes from soil, and the cows and so on, they eat the grass, and the soil is a really important substance. And if you have good soil on your land, boy, you're going to be a lucky person, and you can improve the soil by doing a number of different things. So I want to talk a little bit more about the general homesteading situation and things you need to think about in terms of utility, because a homestead is a very different place than your typical suburban house. Typically, I see a lot of homes, and you go suburban, there's a cul-de-sac, or there's some nice developments that aren't exactly cookie cutter, but I've seen some pretty nice homes that are individual, but it's still maybe in a cul-de-sac and so on. And there are certain kinds of styles that you look for. Utility, where's the utility going to be? Where you have to access the water pump. Well, the water pump may be in the well, but then you have one in the house. You have the water heater and various plumbing situations, and sometimes you have a water purification system. So putting all those kinds of utility things when you build a house from scratch, or if you're just building a little homestead, think about where you're going to have the utility kind of situation where all those we call them mechanicals, the big huge heating and cooling systems. So keep in mind how it's laid out when you build a house from scratch, where that's going to be. Same with things like laundry. There's a certain traffic patterns that happen within a house that, if you're always going into one area, like the kitchen gets so much traffic. Most kitchens get so much traffic back and forth, and people wandering around, getting something to eat, preparing food, washing dishes, all that kind of stuff, having entertainment. So everyone has their certain style of kitchen, but I personally like a kitchen that has lots of open space and some counters. It's nice if you have attractive things in the cabinets and have a glass on the cabinet. Sometimes a smaller space. If you have glass on the cabinets, it makes it just give that extra little feeling of extra space, and you can see what's in there. But if you just throw things into the cabinet, then maybe you shouldn't have a glass a glass door. But it's just one way of using space. Now, I talked a little bit about shelving and different kinds of products you can get these days. There are so many interesting products out there now to store your supplies and your gear. And I know personally, I have aviation gear, I have office gear, I have to store my paperwork and my financial information, my files, and all my prospecting information. And then I have of course I have at least several computers, and then I have a flight simulator and a computer associated with that, and then I have a laptop which I can take to a job. Gear I use for real estate, such as measuring equipment for measuring the size of rooms and so on. So organizing your stuff is very, very important, because a household, as I was saying, is very, very different from your typical suburban place where you pull in and you just park there and you go in through a door, and next thing you know, and it's a very different thing when you have, like, if you walk in and out of the house a whole bunch of times, and you might have tools in your hand, or you might have mud on your feet. That's a very different kind of situation than driving in a nice garage and then walking in a nice clean place and walking into the back door or something like that. You want to figure out how you're going to handle things like, again, walking in from outdoors. If you have a foyer or a mudroom, a lot of old country homes had a mudroom. That's a really great thing to have, especially up in the Northeast where you get snow. You got to walk in all winter long and you got to tramp that snow. It's a good place to have a little space there before you enter the kitchen or wherever, to put your boots down there and hang up your jackets and scarves and things like that. So think a lot about how you use the space that you have, especially if it's a small space. And a big trend these days is the tiny homes, and frankly, some of them are getting pretty big, and you kind of wonder, well, where's that going to end? Because if you need a semi-truck to pull your tiny home, then, it's almost like, what's the point? So I suggest personally, my own personal preference is having several structures on the property. Don't expect one house to have everything, because it's okay if the garage is over there, or your work shed or your tool shed is over across. It doesn't have to be right next to your or in your home space, living space. I love to having good sheds. A good quality shed, you can buy them manufactured, you can build them yourself. And if you have a good shed, you can put all your tools in there and your gear and off-season clothes and your camping stuff and your fishing poles and all that kind of stuff. Does not need to be in your garage, where sometimes, as you know, if you've been a realtor or been with a realtor or look for homes, sometimes you open that garage door and you go, oh yeah, they've been here a long time. That garage is so full. So, same with the basement or the attics. Now, I really suggest in the idea of homesteading, we're talking about homesteading here, is to start small, think small, stay efficient in your design of everything, and how you handle it and how much you have. If you have duplicates of things you don't need, if it's important, have a duplicate. If it's not important, don't have duplicates. Have storage, things like office supplies and things that don't need to be stored in a warm part of the household. They can be kept in a garage. I have a cold area in an old cabin that's on this property, and it's actually a log cabin. It's not really livable, but once upon a time, actually, people tried to live there. But nowadays, it's just not up to code at all. But I use it for storage, and I can have all my office supplies there, and some of my photo gear, my stands, some of my utility gear, things that I don't really need, off-season clothes, boots, things for winter clothing, and so on. So, again, we're talking about using space and containers and combining things all in one space where, for example, if you have certain things where you use frequently for tools for a business or something, you can have them all in one location in the house or wherever you store such things, and then that way okay, whenever I need those tools, I know exactly where to go, bang. And it doesn't have to be a huge space. There's some areas, there's things that I keep, there's certain kinds of equipment that I have that I don't take up a lot of space, but they're kind of important, like my aviation gear, my flight bag, and so on. So I know, okay, if I need that, I know exactly where it's going to be, and everything's in that little bag, and I just throw it in my car, and my keys are there and everything, and off I go to fly my little plane. But again, we're talking about homesteading, my favorite subject, and again, it applies to the outdoors, how you make your fencing, where you put the fencing, how you site your sheds. Think of all those things and the efficiency and the layout of how the movement and the activities that are happening on the property, so that you're going to be walking, for example, where I'm living, I have like the shed that has the tools and the garden shed down behind the house, and then I didn't put it there, so I didn't have much choice here, but there's a small barn on this property. So there's a lot of movement between the barn, and I drive my ATV around the property, and then there's an area down by the stream, so there's a lot of different kinds of movement. And for example, where you place your garden or where you place your chicken pen or whatever, you don't want to interrupt the flow of the movement around. Think about where you're going to mow, how you're going to deal with the different things that happen. You don't want to put a shed necessarily right under a big tree. Sometimes the tree branch will fall down, and next thing you know, you got a bad roof. So all those kind of things come to play in the homesteading, as opposed to your standard little country or your suburban lot. So I try to make these videos short. I appreciate the feedback, like and share. I love sharing new ideas. I love hearing from my viewers. And if there's anything particular related to real estate that you'd like me to address and have a conversation about, I'd be happy to answer questions and put them in context of a video where people can watch it repeatedly. So thanks again for listening. Please like and share, and I hope to see you in one of my other videos.